Some families hide secrets so deep that even blood can't protect them. It was a cold evening in Boston, 1985. The wind rattled the windows of the Hawthorne estate, an old mansion perched on a hill overlooking the harbor. Inside, candles flickered in the grand hall, casting shadows over portraits of stern ancestors. Elena Hawthorne adjusted her evening gown nervously. She had received a peculiar invitation earlier that day, an envelope sealed with the family crest, addressed in her late father's handwriting, and "Come home. The family needs you. Midnight. Do not bring anyone." Elena's stomach tightened. Her father had died under mysterious circumstances 10 years ago, and her mother had vanished shortly after, leaving the sprawling estate to distant relatives. The Hawthorne name was infamous, whispered about in Boston's high society, not just for wealth, but for scandal and sudden disappearances. And as the clock struck midnight, Elena ascended the winding staircase to the grand hall. A single figure awaited her. Her cousin, Victor Hawthorne, older, imposing, with sharp eyes that seemed to see through the dim light. "Welcome home, Elena," Victor said smoothly. "You've been away far too long," Elena hesitated. "Why now? Why send for me after all these years?" Victor's smile was polite, but cold. "The family business and its secrets need closure. And you, as the last living heir, have a role to play." A gust of wind rattled the windows, and the lights flickered. Elena's heart skipped a beat. She had always sensed that the Hawthorne legacy carried shadows, secrets buried beneath wealth and prestige. But tonight the past felt dangerously close. Before she could respond, a sound echoed from the hallway, a soft, deliberate click. A hidden door in the wall swung open, revealing a narrow passage lit by a single, swinging lantern. Victor's smile faded slightly. "That way leads to answers, but beware. Some truths are better left untouched." Elena stepped toward the passage, unaware that a pair of eyes had been watching her from the shadows outside the mansion, and a whispered voice said, "She's arrived. The heir returns." Some paths lead to discovery, and some to danger you cannot escape. Elena's hand trembled as she stepped into the narrow passage. The air smelled of dust and old wood, thick with the weight of decades. The flickering lantern cast long shadows, making the walls seem alive, as if the mansion itself was watching her every move. Victor followed silently, his presence both reassuring and intimidating. "Few have walked these halls in years," he said quietly. "The passage was built for emergencies and secrets. You're about to see both." As they descended, the walls opened to a small chamber lined with shelves of leather-bound books, ledgers, and yellowed papers. A single table stood in the center, covered with letters and photographs. Elena picked one up, a photograph of her father, young and vibrant, standing beside a man she did not recognize. Scribbled on the back was a date, 1975. "Who is he?" she asked. Victor's face darkened. "That man was part of a deal that went wrong. Your father discovered something he shouldn't have, and soon after, he disappeared. Your mother followed, trying to protect the family name. But she vanished as well. And now, the legacy falls to you." Elena's hands shook as she sifted through more documents. Ledger entries, names crossed out, cryptic phrases like "settle before winter" and "bloodline owed" caught her eye. The weight of the family's secrets pressed heavily upon her. Suddenly, a sound echoed through the chamber, metal scraping on stone. Elena froze. Victor's eyes narrowed. "Stay here," he whispered. He moved toward the sound, careful and deliberate. Elena waited, heart pounding. The scraping grew louder, then abruptly stopped. Silence returned, heavy and suffocating. She felt a sudden chill, as if unseen eyes were watching her from the shadows. A draft swept past, carrying a folded note that landed at her feet. She picked it up, hands trembling. Written in elegant, familiar handwriting were the words "Nen, if you value your life, leave the mansion before dawn. Some family truths are deadly." Elena's breath caught. She looked at Victor, who had returned silently, his face unreadable. "Do we leave?" she whispered. Victor shook his head. "We cannot. The answers are here. And if you walk away now, the shadows that have haunted the Hawthornes will consume everything." In the darkness beyond the chamber, a faint figure watched through a crack in the wall. A voice whispered under its breath, and the last heir has returned, and she will pay for what her family hid. Some truths lie hidden in plain sight, waiting for the wrong hands to awaken them. Victor led Elena up a narrow spiral staircase to the attic, a place she had never been as a child. The rooms smelled of cedar, dust, and decay. Boxes and trunks were stacked haphazardly, their contents spilling into the shadows. "Your father kept journals up here," Victor said. "He documented everything. But be careful. He also wrote warnings. He knew the family legacy was dangerous." Elena ran her hands over the trunks, finally opening one near the far wall. Inside were stacks of journals, bound in worn leather, and envelopes filled with letters. She lifted the top journal and flipped it open. Her father's handwriting, precise and hurried, filled the pages with details of clandestine meetings, unexplained disappearances, and cryptic references to a vanishing heir. Her pulse quickened. "Vanishing heir?" she whispered. Victor nodded gravely. "That's what they called your father's plan. He feared the family power, the wealth, and the influence would consume anyone who inherited it. He tried to hide the truth, but he also knew someone would come for you, someone who believes the Hawthorne legacy must be controlled or destroyed." Elena skimmed through the letters, one in particular catching her eye. It was addressed to her father from an unknown sender, dated shortly before his disappearance. "The heir must be silenced before the next winter solstice. The bloodline cannot fall into her hands." Her stomach tightened. Her father's warnings were not just theoretical, they were real. Someone had been hunting her for decades, and a sudden noise from the floor below made her jump. Footsteps. Soft, deliberate. Someone was moving through the mansion. Victor's face darkened. "They've returned. Whoever sent that note is already inside the house. We must move quickly." Elena grabbed several journals and letters, stuffing them into her coat. They descended the attic stairs cautiously, listening as the footsteps grew louder. At the bottom, the front door creaked. A shadow passed across the dimly lit hallway. Elena and Victor exchanged a tense glance, both understanding the danger. "Stay close," Victor whispered. "We can't confront them head-on." "Not yet." A hand reached for the doorknob from the outside. Through the frosted glass, a silhouette paused, and a voice hissed in. "The heir is here, and the time for reckoning has come. Some legacies demand a chase, and running may be the only way to survive." The doorknob rattled violently, and Elena's heart raced. Victor grabbed her hand, pulling her into the shadows of the grand hallway. The front door creaked again, then slammed against the frame as a figure tried to force it open. "They won't stop," Victor whispered. "They've been waiting for this moment. Every Hawthorne heir has been hunted, but you are the last, and they want you gone, permanently." Elena clutched the journals to her chest, their fragile pages a lifeline to her father's secrets. Her mind raced. The footsteps outside were precise, confident. These were not amateurs. They were trained, patient, and relentless. Suddenly, a shadow darted past the hallway window. Victor motioned for her to follow as he led her down a hidden side staircase. The mansion groaned under their weight as they moved, snow blowing in through broken panes, chilling the air. "And Elena, the carriage house," Victor said. "We can escape through there. It leads to the alley behind the estate. It's the only way without being seen." They raced through the corridors, the journals bouncing in Elena's coat. The sound of boots on wood followed them, closer, faster. She dared a glance over her shoulder and saw a figure slip silently down the grand staircase, barely illuminated by the flickering candlelight. The carriage house door groaned as they pushed it open. Outside, the night was bitterly cold, wind whipping through the trees, snow crunching beneath their feet. Victor pulled Elena into the shadows, scanning for movement. "They're out there," he murmured. "We have to keep moving. Every street, every alley, they could be anywhere." The chase continued through the winding streets of Boston, past abandoned warehouses and silent harbors. Elena's lungs burned, but adrenaline kept her moving. Victor led the way, familiar with the city and every hidden route, every shadowed alley. Finally, they reached a safe house, a modest brick building hidden behind a row of shuttered shops. Victor ushered Elena inside, locking the door behind them. Inside, the warmth of a small fireplace offered a fleeting sense of safety. Elena sank into a chair, trembling. "They knew we'd be here," she whispered. "How did they find us so fast?" Victor shook his head grimly. The Hawthorne name carries power. And enemies. They've been waiting for this night for decades. And they won't stop until the last heir is gone, or until the secrets are theirs. Outside, in the darkness, a figure observed the safe house, phone in hand, speaking quietly. They've fled to the safe house. Prepare for the final move. She cannot escape the Hawthorne legacy. Some truths demand revelation, and surviving them can shatter everything you thought you knew. NNTHE's safe house was quiet except for the crackle of the fireplace. Elena sank into a worn armchair, holding the journals close. Victor stood nearby, his expression grim. Before we go any further, Victor said, "There's something you need to know about your family, about your father, and why you were hidden." And Elena leaned forward, gripping the journal. "I've waited my whole life for answers." "Speak." And Victor took a deep breath. "Your father discovered that the Hawthorne fortune wasn't just built on trade and investments. It was built on secrets, smuggling, illegal dealings, and connections with men who killed to protect those secrets. He tried to protect you by disappearing, by making it seem as if you were gone." Elena's eyes widened. "So my mother, my disappearance?" Victor's voice softened. "She went into hiding to protect you. She knew they would come for the heir. For decades, she watched from the shadows, ensuring no one could reach you. That's why you were sent away, away from the family name. And now, those who survived, those who are left, they want what you possess. The right to the legacy and all the secrets it holds." Elena's mind spun. The journals, the letters, the cryptic warnings. They were not just memories. They were maps, guides, and evidence of danger that had stalked her family for generations. Victor continued, lowering his voice. "There's one person you can trust, your cousin Lydia. She knows the truth, and she has allies. She can help you expose the secrets safely. But first, we must get the journals and the ledger to her." Elena nodded, determination settling over her fear. "Then we move. Tonight, we have no time." As they prepared to leave, a noise at the window froze them. A shadow fell across the floor. Someone had followed them, tracking their every move. Victor grabbed a small pistol from his coat. "We're not alone. And if they're willing to wait decades, they'll be relentless now. We have to act fast." Elena's pulse quickened. The firelight flickered across the journals on the table, the fragile pages of decades-old secrets, now the most dangerous object in Boston. A masked figure slipped through the shadows outside, whispering to someone on the phone, "She knows the truth. Prepare the final confrontation. The last heir cannot survive the night." When danger closes in, survival depends on courage, wits, and trust you can barely afford. Elena, Victor, and the journals moved quietly through the back door of the safe house, stepping into the bitter Boston night. The streets were deserted, snow crunching beneath their feet, and the shadows seemed unnaturally deep. Every alley, every corner could conceal a pursuer. Victor whispered, "We move fast. Stick to the side streets. They know the main roads. And whatever you do, don't let them see you carrying the journals." Elena's hands were numb, both from cold and tension. The weight of the journals pressed against her chest, but she carried it without complaint. Inside those pages lay decades of secrets, evidence of murders, disappearances, betrayals, all linked to her family's legacy. Losing them would mean losing everything. A soft sound, a whisper of movement, reached her ears. Elena froze, pressing herself against the side of a brick building. Victor did the same, signaling her to stay silent. Two figures slipped past the street corner ahead, their eyes scanning, guns concealed but ready. "They're close," Victor muttered. "We can't outrun them forever. We need a plan." Elena glanced down at the journals. "There's a carriage house on the far end of the estate, old tunnels beneath it. If we can reach them, we can hide and find a way to get the journals safely to Lydia." Victor nodded. "Then that's our path. Move." NNTHE trio sprinted through narrow streets, slipping between shadows, occasionally stopping to catch their breath and listen. Footsteps echoed behind them, more than one pair, relentless and coordinated. As they neared the carriage house, Elena felt a hand brush against her arm, an attempt to grab her. She twisted, knocking the attacker off balance, and Victor incapacitated him with a swift strike. They pressed on, adrenaline pumping, until finally the entrance to the carriage house came into view. Inside, the tunnels were dark and damp, the smell of earth and decay thick. Elena led the way, keeping the journals secure, her mind racing with what they contained. Each step echoed like a drumbeat of warning. The pursuers were close, but the tunnels offered temporary safety. Victor's voice cut through the darkness. "We can rest here, but only briefly. We need to reach Lydia before dawn. She's our only chance to expose this without anyone else getting hurt." Elena swallowed hard. "I never imagined my own family legacy would put me in danger like this." Victor's eyes softened. "Some legacies are curses, Elena. But tonight, you decide whether it ends as a curse or a truth revealed." A low hiss echoed through the tunnel, followed by footsteps. Another figure had entered, someone familiar, someone Elena had never expected to see again. When trust is scarce, the right ally can turn the tide, but betrayal may still lurk nearby. NNTHE footsteps in the tunnel grew louder, and Elena froze. The shadow that approached was familiar, and for a heartbeat, her heart stopped. "Lydia?" she whispered. NNTHE figure stepped forward, pulling back her hood. It was indeed Lydia Hawthorne, her eyes sharp and wary, but relief flooded Elena's chest. "I knew you'd survive," Lydia said, pulling Elena into a brief embrace. "Victor told me you might need help. And I've been watching." Victor lowered his weapon, studying Lydia carefully. "How did you know where to find us?" Lydia shook her head. "I've been tracking the others. They've been monitoring the family for decades. And when the last heir returns, well, they move fast. But I've managed to stay a step ahead. We can get the journals and the ledger out safely, but we have to move quickly." Elena glanced at Victor. "Can we trust her?" Victor hesitated. "I trust her skills. Her loyalty is proven. But in this family, trust is a delicate thing. One misstep could be fatal." NNTHE trio moved carefully through the tunnels, Lydia leading them toward a hidden exit near the harbor. Every sound echoed in the narrow passageways. Every shadow seemed to flicker with menace. Once outside, the night air was bitter, carrying the scent of salt and cold. A small boat waited, tethered quietly under the dock, and Lydia gestured toward it. "This will take us to a safe location. No one will find us here until morning." As they boarded, the sound of distant engines reached their ears, cars moving fast, headlights cutting through the darkness. The pursuers were not far behind. Elena clutched the journals tightly, feeling the weight of her father's warnings and the generations of secrets now resting in her hands. She looked at Lydia, who nodded resolutely. "We're not out of danger yet, but together we have a chance." Victor scanned the water, tension in his posture. "They'll come for us. They always do. But this time, we have the evidence, and we have allies. We can end this." NNTHE boat cut through the icy water, leaving the city lights behind. Elena felt a fleeting sense of hope, but she knew the night was far from over. From the shadowed docks, a figure watched the boat slip away. In a low, menacing voice, he whispered to a companion, "They think they're safe. They're heading straight into the trap." Sometimes, safety is an illusion, and the closer you get to freedom, the deadlier the path. NNTHE boat cut through the foggy harbor, its engine barely audible over the lapping waves. Elena's fingers dug into the journals, her mind racing through every warning her father had left behind. Lydia and Victor kept a careful watch, eyes scanning the mist for any sign of pursuit. "I can't shake the feeling that we're being followed," Victor muttered, gripping the side of the boat. "It's too quiet," Lydia frowned. "Quiet doesn't mean safe. Someone knows exactly where we're going. They've been tracking the Hawthorne line for decades. Every heir is a prize and a threat." Elena swallowed hard. "We just need to reach the safe house outside the city. That's all." NNBUT. As they approached the shore, the fog began to thin, revealing more than just the dim outline of trees. A vehicle waited at the edge of the dock, headlights cutting through the haze, casting long, threatening shadows over the water, and Victor cursed under his breath. "They anticipated us. We're walking straight into their trap." NTHE boat slowed, and Elena felt a cold dread settle in her chest. Figures emerged from the vehicle, armed and moving with precision. The journals in her hands suddenly felt heavier, every secret now a target on their backs. "Do not stop," Lydia commanded. "We can still make it. Follow me. Quickly. Up the hidden path. It leads into the woods. If we can reach the old Miller cabin, we can regroup and plan our next move." NNTHE3 leapt onto the shore, the cold mud sucking at their boots. Shots rang out behind them, bullets whizzing past. Victor returned fire, covering their retreat while Elena and Lydia ran ahead. The journals secure. NNTHE forest loomed ahead, dark and silent, but offering the faintest hope of concealment. They sprinted through the undergrowth, branches clawing at their faces, hearts pounding. Behind them, the voices of the pursuers grew closer, echoing through the trees. Finally, they reached the Miller cabin, a dilapidated structure partially hidden by overgrown brush. Victor barricaded the door while Lydia set a few traps, loose boards and tripwires, to slow any intruders. Elena sank against the wall, shivering, her breath ragged. "They're relentless. Why is this happening to my family?" Lydia placed a hand on her shoulder. "Because the Hawthorne legacy isn't just wealth. It's power, secrets, and revenge. And those who want it will stop at nothing. But here, we have time to plan. Time to strike back." Outside, a shadow watched the cabin from the tree line. A single figure spoke into a radio N. "They're in the woods. Prepare the extraction. The heir will not leave alive. Some truths are buried for decades, and unearthing them can change everything." Inside the Miller cabin, the fire flickered, casting dancing shadows across the walls. Elena, Victor, and Lydia huddled around a small table, the journals spread before them. Each page revealed layers of deceit, hidden alliances, and dangerous debts tied to the Hawthorne legacy, and Elena, Lydia said softly, "There's something else you need to know. Something your father never fully revealed in his journals." And Elena leaned forward, heart pounding. "What is it?" Victor exchanged a glance with Lydia. "Your family's enemies aren't just after wealth or influence. They're after a secret. Something your father discovered that could ruin powerful people even today. And the ledger. It's the key." Elena's hand trembled as she flipped through the final pages of the journals. Names, dates, and coded entries hinted at illicit dealings, hidden accounts, and threats spanning decades. Her father had been meticulous, recording every detail, yet obscuring enough to protect her. "The ledger isn't just evidence," Lydia continued. "It's proof. Proof that the Hawthorne legacy was manipulated, stolen from those it rightfully belonged to, and that anyone who tried to reveal it disappeared." Elena's mind raced. The disappearance of her mother, the death of her father, the decades of fear, they all pointed to a network of powerful figures willing to kill to maintain control. Victor leaned in, voice low. "That's why they've been relentless, and why you, the last heir, have been hunted. You carry the ledger, and with it, the ability to expose the truth. But doing so puts you directly in the crosshairs of those who will kill to keep their secrets." Elena swallowed hard. "Then we have no choice. We have to reveal it. We can't let fear control us anymore." Suddenly, a noise outside broke the tension, a branch snapping, followed by muffled voices. The enemies had found them again, closing in on the cabin. And Lydia whispered urgently, "We need a plan. We can't confront them head on. We have to use the knowledge your father left behind. His clues, his traps. It's our advantage." Elena nodded, determination flooding her fear. For the first time in her life, she felt the weight of her family's legacy as a weapon, not a curse. Outside the cabin, the intruders paused, sensing something amiss. One of them hissed into a radio NN. "They have the ledger. Initiate containment. No one leaves alive. When all secrets are revealed, the past demands justice, and only the strong survive." NNTHE forest surrounding the Miller cabin was deathly silent, broken only by the crunch of boots in the snow. Elena, Victor, and Lydia prepared themselves for the inevitable confrontation. The journals and ledger were stacked on the table, the fragile pages carrying decades of power, betrayal, and danger. "Tonight it ends," Victor said, his voice steady despite the tension. "We either expose the truth, or they bury it, and us, with it." Elena's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the journals. "All of this, my father's warnings, my mother's disappearance, it all leads here. We have to be ready for anything." Outside, the intruders moved with deadly precision, their silhouettes slipping between the trees. They were trained, ruthless, and patient. Elena realized that these were the same forces her father had fought against in secret, forces willing to kill to protect their power. Suddenly, one of the figures charged the cabin. Victor fired, forcing the intruder back, while Lydia pulled Elena toward a hidden trapdoor beneath the floorboards. They descended quickly, moving through the tunnels beneath the cabin, another secret left by her father, prepared for the day his last heir returned. NNTHE underground passages were narrow, dark, and treacherous. Every step was a gamble, but Elena's resolve grew with each heartbeat. They emerged in a small clearing outside the forest, just as dawn broke over the horizon. Waiting vehicles and armed figures appeared on the far edge of the clearing, but Elena had one advantage: the ledger and journals. She raised them high, letting sunlight glint off the pages. "This ends now," she shouted. "The truth will be revealed. Your secrets, your lies, they're exposed." NTHE intruders hesitated, caught off guard by her determination and the evidence she wielded. That moment of hesitation was all Victor and Lydia needed. With careful coordination, they forced the remaining pursuers back, ensuring Elena and the ledger remained safe. And as the sun rose, casting warm light over the snow, a police convoy appeared on the horizon. Elena had contacted authorities, providing enough proof to bring the entire network into the light. The weight of decades of fear and secrecy began to lift. Elena looked at Victor and Lydia. "We survived. We actually survived." Victor nodded. "And now, the Hawthorne legacy can finally be exposed for what it truly is: truth, not fear." Lydia added quietly, "The heirs have a choice: continue the cycle of secrecy or break it." "You've chosen to break it, Elena." For the first time in her life, Elena felt the burden of her family's legacy transform into empowerment. The vanishing heir had returned, and she would not be hidden again. The ledger and journals were safely in the hands of the authorities, and the powerful figures who had hunted the Hawthornes for decades were exposed. The family's dark past, once buried in fear and silence, became a story of courage, resilience, and the enduring strength of truth. Elena stood in the morning sun, the snow glistening around her, and whispered to herself, "The past cannot vanish anymore, and neither will I."